And this is the weekly owl power. After spending more and more time in the box, the female spent an entire day there before leaving at dusk. And then she spent an entire night in the box. And on Monday at 5:32 a.m., an egg was visible. And the second egg came 4 days later, sometime Thursday morning. Here's Kaylee and Tatum with a few things we observed.
Thanks, Henry. So far, here's what we've seen. Just as the weather turned brittly cold, the female laid an egg. You might think the egg has to be kept warm all the time. And while it's true that during the day she sleeps and warms the eggs, at night, even with sub-zero temperatures, the female still leaves the nest box multiple times. She will go out often to receive food from the male, but sometimes she's gone for as long as 30 minutes.
Frigid temperatures for 30 minutes? How come the egg doesn't freeze? How is this possible? Can it freeze and thaw and still survive? Is there some kind of antifreeze in owl eggs? Another behavior we noticed was the female trying to put her feathers in the nest. She appeared to pull her downy feathers from her chest and underwing and place them loosely around the eggs. This may have been triggered by the cold weather, but we aren't sure.
We'll be sure to keep you informed about the fate of the eggs. Live from Mailbox 1, this is Kaylee and Tatum.
Thanks for the field power. Well, that's it for now. Join us next week for more updates. I'm Henry Gold, and this is the weekly owl power. Last week, the female left the box a lot, even with 2 eggs and sub-zero temperatures. This week, she's hardly been leaving the box at all. In this video clip, we can hear the male calling, but instead of leaving the box to get her meal, she stays put until the male comes with food. After a bumpy start, it looks like the male is settling into a regular feeding pattern. Let's go to Kaylee and Tatum.
Thanks, Henry. A few weeks ago, we reported the observation that 1 egg is laid per day. In this year's nest, the gap between eggs was 4 days. In the years when eggs were laid 1 every day, the owlets came out of the box 1 per day and took to the tree. It will be interesting to see if this brood follows the same pattern. We'll keep watching and let you know what happens.
In the last week, we have also seen a lot fewer visits from the male, lots of vocal cries from the female, but very few responses from the male.
Live from Mailbox 1, this is Tatum and Kaylee.
Okay, thank you. Well, that wraps up this week's Owl Power. See you next week.
Hi everyone. Today, I wanted to give you just some cool, quick information about how we name different organisms in science. For example, maybe you've heard of our species referred to as Homo sapiens. This naming system is called binomial nomenclature. That's a big phrase, so let's break it down. Binomial simply means two names, and nomenclature is just a fancy word for a system of naming things. So in science, all species are named using two categories: their generic epithet, which defines its genus, and their specific epithet, which defines its species. Genus and species are the two bottom categories in the taxonomic ranking system, which means they are the two most specific ways to classify organisms. So who do you think chooses these names? Well, I can tell you that plants or extinct organisms have no say in what they're named. It's all humans who have put names on these species. So our species was named Homo sapiens by Carl Linnaeus in the 1750s. It's also important to note that he was also the one who came up with all of this naming process. He chose the Latin term homo as our genus name, which roughly translates to human being, and sapiens as our specific epithet, which roughly translates to be wise. Today, the scientist who discovers a species gets the right to name it. And sometimes scientists have a little bit more fun in choosing the names. Here are some examples of what I mean. There's an entire genus of ferns named after Lady Gaga. This one specifically is named Gaga germinata, which uses Lady Gaga's real last name, Germinata, to name the species as well. There is a genus of very small sea snails called Idibidium, which are smaller in size than the genus named just Bidium. There's a species of a fungus that has a sponge-like consistency called Spongiformia squarepantsii. There's a worm species called Yoda purpurata, which roughly translates to purple Yoda. There's even a wasp named after Brad Pitt, who, by the way, attended the University of Missouri. So what you should take away from this today is that you could become a scientist who discovers new species and gets to name them. But what would you name your new species after?
So again, food, a bear, what they eat, what they're interested in. Bears are basically giant raccoons. I say that jokingly, and I kind of mean it though. They'll eat whatever they can get a hold of. It depends on the time of year, what's available. They'll eat dead stuff. They'll catch and eat live stuff. If it's not too much work, they'll climb trees and eat acorns. They'll eat fruits. They'll eat a lot of insects, actually, whether they're breaking logs apart or whatever. Then again, in the fall, you've got acorns and pawpaws, things like that. This map here just kind of talks about, again, with food, with interactions. I'm down in southwest Missouri in Greene County, the bottom left of the map there. Trash is a leading factor for interactions that we have with bears. Either bears getting into residential trash, bears in dumpsters, that kind of thing. Next is bird feeders, people that are trying to feed birds and watch birds, but then are having bears eat it. So now you've got bears in your front yard, you've got bears on your deck, bears by your front door, deer feed. So again, you can't talk about bears without talking about food. Like I said before, they're highly attracted to human-associated foods. It's basically a big raccoon, trash, pet food, bird feeders. We have some issues with livestock as far as especially bees or chicken feed. Run into that a lot. So the next thing everybody really wants to know about is denning. Bears hibernate. Bears aren't true hibernators. They go into kind of a torpor. So we put collars. I put collars on bears in the summertime. I put tags in their ears. I follow that bear with the collar to its den in the winter. When I get to that den, I can then drug her and check her out and make sure she's healthy. And also we'll see how many cubs she has. And that's how we get our population indices. We know how I said earlier they were growing 9%. That's how we know, because we check these. We've got about 30 females that have collars. And so when I check these bears and I see that she's got one or two, I've seen as many as 4 cubs come off of one sow here. So that's, we use that data. Again, with the denning, the females go in first, the ones that are pregnant. The males will go in December. There's been males out even as late as Christmas before. Denning is actually not so much about how cold the weather is as much as it is about how active the food is. How plentiful the food is, I guess is a better way to say it. If there's a lot of food around that bear can continue to eat all the way to Christmas, it will. You'll see that these denning times are shorter the farther south you go, like Louisiana, Florida, etc., because they have a longer growing season. So those foods are there. Both of these pictures are Missouri pictures. The one there in the tree trunk is a hollowed spot in a tree. It's kind of dug out under that tree. You've got a bear in a rock ledge there, like a cave, and she's raked leaves in with her. We also have bears that make brush pile dens, and so it literally could be slash piles from logging operations or just where trees have fallen down in a storm. They'll literally just kind of make them a little spot and get underneath there. It's not as dry as you would think it would need to be. It's not as warm as you think it would need to be. It's just kind of a good place to be. This is what we call an open den. You can kind of see a depression there in front of the binoculars. It's basically like a big bird's nest. I've seen them on the ground, and she'll have dens there and everything, have cubs there and everything. So there will be a bear laying on the ground in that big bowl, and she might have, 2 cubs underneath her that whole time that are going to be nursing and everything. And there's literally nothing above them. When it rains, they get wet. When it snows, there's going to be snow on top of them. So that fur coat works that well, and she does that good of a job of keeping them dry and safe. Obviously, everybody's read a storybook about a bear at a cave, and we've got a lot of karst topography, limestone caves here in Missouri. So sure, I've seen bears in bear dens and caves, or like rock ledges, or just, any kind of little opening. This one is kind of unique because it's up off the ground about, probably 6 to 8 feet. But, not all caves are like that, but it's pretty unique. But most of the time they're in holes in the ground, they're in hollow trees, they're in brush piles. There's no shortage of places for a bear to make a den in Missouri. So, be bear aware. If you see a bear, never approach one. Generally, they don't really see that well. They're not really that interested in you as far as, as eating you per se. Again, they're a big raccoon. It's a lot of work to try to kill something alive and catch it and kill it and eat it. They would much rather eat ants or grubs or vegetation or things off the ground, bird seed. They don't want to work that hard. So if you, again, never approach a bear, remove all food sources. With something that's so dependent on eating 20,000 calories a day, eating 20 hours a day, if they can find anything and come back 2 days in a row, they're going to come back 3 and 4 days in a row and see if it's still there. So that's obviously a big problem for trash cans, etc. So pet food, and again, in Columbia, probably not going to see that many bears right now. In the future, you might. But it's also important because a fed bear is ultimately a dead bear. If a bear is eating trash cans, eating trash and trash cans on the side of the road, it's probably going to get hit by a car. If a fed bear is eating, dog food on the back of somebody's house, on their porch, etc., someone might feel fear for their safety and shoot that bear. Excuse me. Ultimately, always the bear loses by having human foods. By interacting with human foods, the bear always loses. Again, bird feeders, I just love to make this comment because they're so popular in the state. Please remove bird feeders in bear country from April through November. Across the wintertime, when the bears are denning, it's not a problem, but they love black oil sunflower seeds. They'll eat the suet cakes, anything. Again, it's calories and it's easy to get. So like I said, if you see a bear, make sure you let somebody know. Bang pots and pans together, remove the food sources. If things persist, if this is a continuing problem, I can come out and help you. We've done some electric fencing projects or different scare devices, but there is help out there besides just feeling like there's nothing that can be done or shooting the bear and killing it. There are a lot of steps in between. Again, talk to the bear in a calm voice. Don't run away, back away, raise your arms to look big. Excuse me. These are all just very safe, standard practices you'll see at state parks, etc. Again, black bears are not like grizzly bears. They're not near as dangerous. So how dangerous are they? I'm not going to read through this whole thing, but, You know, the 750 million black bears in North America kill less than one person a year on average. While 1 out of every 16,000 people has committed murder. So literally, it's more dangerous to go to the mall in town than it is to be in the woods with bears in Missouri. Lightning strikes kill more people. Even dogs kill more people than bears do. A 2008 report by dogbite.org shows that 35 dog breeds contributed to 433 deaths in a 13-year period. So again, I don't really worry that much about it, and I work outside a lot. I work with bears. Bears should be respected and understood, but I don't fear them. I was going to show you real quick this project story map. This would be something you could probably pull up on your own. I'm going to leave it here so you can kind of see it. We update this every year, and when we have this story map, trying to make sure I can share it to you. The project story map is something that we open up every year. I'm having problems. And anyway, the point is there's videos on there. There's actual videos from inside bear dens in Missouri. There are lots of good information on there that I just really can't get into right now. But you should really make sure that you pull that aside and look at it. Like I said, there's some videos. It's all Missouri information. And it's all local good stuff there. So normally if we were in person, I'd be giving you a chance to ask me questions. Obviously, we can't do that since this is recorded. But here's my information. Again, my name is Josh Wisdom. Feel free to send me an email or give me a call if you got something I can help you with. And thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Hi, my name is Liz Kalanda. I'm a student at Mizzou, and today I'll be discussing the ice shelves that are splitting in Antarctica. The ice crack shown on the right is titled Chasm 1 and is just one of many really large ice cracks in Antarctica. Two questions arise. One, why is this happening? And two, what is its significance? So let's answer those. It's happening because of global warming, which creates warmer atmospheric conditions. This in turn increases hydrofracturing, increases surface melting, which melts the top of an ice sheet, and increases basal melting, which melts the bottom of an ice sheet. And according to Lanise 2020, when warm atmospheric conditions cause the surface of an ice shelf to melt, meltwater can pool in these cracks and cause hydrofracturing, a process in which the excess water puts pressure on the ice, deepening the cracks and sometimes triggering a complete collapse of the shelf. Why is this significant? It's significant because it creates an average rise in the sea level, which comes with some consequences, such as coastal flooding or permanent submergence, coastal erosion, storm surges that push further inland, loss and change of coastal ecosystems, impeded drainage, salinization or an accumulation of soluble salts of soils, ground, and surface water. And according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, in the United States, almost 40% of the population lives in relatively high population density coastal areas. So those are the areas that are going to be affected the most. Delving a little bit deeper into global warming and the greenhouse effect, greenhouse gases, or GHGs, such as carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, act like the glass in a greenhouse by trapping in the sun's solar energy and stopping it from going back into space. This trapping of heat is what's warming the Earth. Causes for increased greenhouse gases include burning fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas, deforestation, agriculture and farming, using nitrogenous fertilizers, and Earth's feedback loops, which we're going to take a little closer look at in the global warming spotlight. Feedback loops are really important in that they demonstrate how seemingly small changes can become amplified over time. In this case, we have a positive feedback loop. Warming leads to more carbon dioxide, which causes more warming, and so on. Tying it all back together, global warming leads to warmer atmospheric conditions. Warmer conditions melt snow, allowing meltwater to pool in ice cracks. Excess water puts pressure on ice, deepening the cracks in a process called hydrofracturing. Warmer atmospheric conditions also lead to basal and surface melting of ice sheets. This leads to a rise in sea levels, which can be problematic for coastal areas. All of this information is significant in that it helps us understand why ice shelves are splitting in Antarctica and why it matters. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you all so much for listening.